In India, we have the major issue of the label claim. And the data shows that we have label claim only for 15 to 20% crops. What it means that we need to think differently that how we bring more and more crops under the label claim, which directly help us in terms of our enhancing our agriculture export, if I can put up, plus also making sure that our fellow Indian citizens also get the same quality of food.
Today, most of the universities, they are struggling. Like, for many crops, there are no, label claim. So how to justify? And as per the rules, we cannot, give in writing also. We cannot brief them that you go and spray this if you have these problems. So these are certain issues which needs immediate attention. So I hope with the August gathering, we will be able to justify this today.
For MRL establishment can include the following. 1. Representative crops. Within each crop group, certain crops are designated as representative crops. These crops are selected based on their similarity in residue behavior to other crops in the group. Residue data obtained from representative crops are used to establish MRL for all crops.
This whole registration process, this crop grouping is so important and for the MRL fixation issue, that even after completing the whole registration process, registration certificate is lifeless without MRLs. So,
because India is exporting almost 600 plus commodities to almost 150 plus countries, and similarly importing thousands of commodities, plant and plant materials from more than 160 countries. It includes 55 to 60 fruits and vegetables, cereals, tea, coffee, and medicinal herbs, other primary produce. And when we see the label claim, it is I think available on less than 100 agriculture crops or horticulture crops.
I think those discussions are much more needed here, because in India, as we all know, that we have a number of climatic conditions, right from temperate to tropical and subtropical, more rains, more than 3000 mm rains to 500 mm rain. So a lot of conditions are available. Soils are different, the flora is different, the weeds are different kinds of crops, and the combination of crops, intercrops are being promoted, so conditions are different. Now we are promoting sugarcane with intercrops like pulses. So the moment we change this type of cropping pattern and then cropping sequences, the requirement of pests and diseases and all those things change.
So with JMPR, we would set a subgroup MRL. First of all, if the gap covers all the commodities in the subgroup, and if there's a robust data set available for the representative commodity, right? So those are the two key points that we need to make sure of.
Is that following residue data generation, it's not simply a process of then seeking a Codex MRL. There are two critical outcomes required from this work. Not only the generation of the residue data, but also a domestic registration with a product label. Therefore, both the residue data plus a registered product label is critical to seeking a Codex MRL. As the Codex procedure requires, the Codex MRLs will only be established for approved or registered uses. In other words, you cannot obtain a Codex MRL with data alone.
Helpful to understand about the crop grouping concept, where we are struggling and where we started. As we all know very well, and globally, the pesticides play a vital role in food security, especially for the management of insect pests and disease-causing plant pathogens and weeds. However, these pesticides are toxic substances. Thus, the registration of this pesticide is crucial for safeguarding the human being and environment. However, the registration process of a molecule on a crop is time-consuming. It usually requires 4 to 5 years.
I'm very delighted. Yeah, and I'm also action-oriented person, and whichever way we are going to go, I have listened all the speakers. there are good points and there are some critical points, especially highlighted by Dr. Shah. And but as few persons said, that we have to implement and then fine tuning will go on.
Codex requirement for data generation for MRL fixation. We see there are two types of data which are required. One, of course, is the major requirement, which is the gap data for the residue, and the other is for some minor commodities like spices. They have a provision of the monitoring data, so they consider monitoring data for the fixation of MRLs in case of spices. So the data which is generated on spices in the scheme, this is submitted to FAO/WHO JMPR for risk assessment.
Being precise and accurate residue testing results. So principles of residue testing, just for the general understanding of everyone, it starts from sampling. Then sample is collected and brought to the lab. It is extracted. Then during extraction, we also extract so many additional materials which are not important for our testing. So there is a step called cleanup, and finally instrumentation analysis.
So the proposal from CropLife India that even we have seen since morning many presentations, that residue data is not required actually. So that's why we kept as it is. We are not removing any requirement. It is only suggestion from CropLife that residue don't keep as a requirement when we are obtaining a label claim on a member crops. Bioefficacy we agreed, because we have seen in Australia also in some cases they are worried about the crop safety. So that will be addressed in the bioefficacy data required. This is all from the data requirement perspective of CropLife India. Now coming to
under the same crop group of pome fruits, so the first question that the crop grouping principles are aligned, and you will also have to see the gram active rate. So the gram active rate for both the crops are 5.7 gram per tree. Formulation is also same, PHI is also same, and number of applications are also same, which means that the crop grouping principles are applicable. Now the data was given on the apple fruits of 4 data points based upon the 4 mean values of the trials. So we have put those 4 values into the OECD MRL calculator, and you can see that we have derived a STMR of 0.69.
Is going to benefit not just the farmers for the legal use. It's okay. Legal use and safe use of the products for domestic as well as international exports. This will really help in help the industry as well as the regulators to bring in some sort of efficiency.
Of the workshop. Excuse for the text, but I think there is a lot of intense effort today. So a couple of recommendations here are: crop grouping policy, we all know it has been principally aligned and agreed by registration committee, but it is now the time that further modalities to be accepted and we come up with the final recommendation, both in terms of crop grouping concept and data generation for MRL establishment. Principles of plus minus 25% deviation in gap, especially with regard to dose rate of extrapolation of residue data to member crops for label extensions to be accepted. Adoption of proportionality and scaling concept, which we have actually talked over throughout the day today, in case of gap can be accepted if dose rate is about 25% but within 0.3x to 4x. We talked about data mining approach. We know this is internationally accepted practice, so acceptance of this in addition to the Indian residue to be considered. Existing residue data requirement to be sustained for implementation of crop grouping principle. However, we talked about number of trials to be accepted, but request that we continue with the existing practice. Going forward, we can deliberate upon through different open house options along with industry and come up with future recommendations.
For the last 1.5 years, we were contemplating to convene this workshop, and many people were challenging. Much of work has been done. When we went to serve to grace this occasion as a chief guest, he said a lot of work is done. But our main stimulus was to assemble all stakeholders together, especially FSSAI, ICR, CIB expert, registry committee members. So we are successful in that. So I'm really feel gratified with this event happening.